They let you know. So I have the awesome job of introducing our wonderful panelists today. First is Kay Richardson. Kay is an out and proud Black queer native of Montclair, New Jersey. They are an activist and racial equity educator. They firmly believe in equity of all women, TGNC and cis, and believe that there should be a place for women and all identities to live freely and thrive. For more than a decade, Kay has been dedicated to creating spaces that foster genuine community around social differences. They have extensive experience facilitating workshops and working with groups around LGBTQ education. Currently, Kay serves as the manager of hotline and prevention programs at the New York City Anti-Violence Project. Kay has been doing both nonprofit and rape crisis work for 12 years. Their favorite show is The Simpsons, and they are an avid reader. And give us a wave, Kay. All right, and second is LaLa Zannell. LaLa Zannell leads the ACLU's advocacy and organizing work to support and empower transgender and non-binary people. LaLa spoke at the White House for the first Women's History Month briefing that included trans women, the last briefing on transgender people under the Obama administration, and also testified at the first Congressional Forum on Violence Against Transgender People. As the chair of the Policy and Working Group Committee for the Communities United for Police Reform, CPR, LaLa was part of passing Intro 541, which addresses constitutional searches by the NYPD. Recently, LaLa created the first trans discrimination survey in New York City and collected data on trans people's experiences in employment. In 2015, LaLa was featured in the Advocates Trans 100 list. And finally, we have Asanni Armon. Asanni is a Black genderqueer femme community organizer and is the founder of For the Girls, which fundraises to assist Black trans people with rent and gender-affirming surgeries. They have been an organizer for the past 6 years and have previously organized with various Black queer groups. They began their movement work as a founding member of the Black Justice League at Princeton University, which worked to create an equitable environment for Black queer students on campus. They also were previously a member of the Black Youth Project 100, a Black organization that mobilizes around various issues that Black people face in New York City, including institutional anti-Blackness and various ways it manifests itself, including gentrification, police brutality, mistreatment of incarcerated people, etc., transphobia, and more. They are passionate about addressing and redressing the violence that Black, queer, and transgender people face as a result of capitalism. And this, is such a wonderful group. Just all of that, so much joy, so much expertise, and I'm really happy to be diving in. So my first question for all of you is, can you share, some more about who you are in your own words, and how your community work centers Black queerness and healing, since that is our focus today. So whoever wants to take it, go for it and run with it.
I guess I can go. I don't mind. Can you hear me? All right. So as she said, my name is LaLa Zannell. My pronouns are Goddess, Queen, Sister, and she, her, hers. I have been doing movement, I like to say, for people who are trans, particularly Black folks, that you have been doing this as soon as you came into your understanding of who your truth was. That has been your revolution, that has been your advocacy, that has been your political grounding, because everywhere you're moving in the world, you're trying to get people to understand who you are. And so I've been doing that all my life since I transitioned at 15. As far as professionally moving into New York City, I've been on the ground for over 10 years. I was a former member of T-Walk, and just really a part of making sure that Black trans lives that were being taken were being respected in the media and humanized, and really making this trans tipping point that they were having. I was a part of that, along with another stream of other amazing leaders, to make sure that our stories have not been erased, as well as doing work to ensure that we also take space to have joy. I think that in this work, it's just always from media, from the police, from legislators. They love to exploit our trauma and the pain and our and we're victims, but they don't talk about the joys that some of us are children, our parents, the joy that some of us have parents that love us, the joys that some of us have dreams and aspirations and are talented. It is not because we're trans, it's because we're talented. And so making space for that and having that new wave of trans folks owning all of who they are in ways that it's just not about tokenizing and victimization. And so that's a part of, what I try to do. And also healing, lots of healing. We all have so much healing to do. And so if you're not incorporating healing in this movement work, you're still, no matter how you make the outside look and you smile, that inside you have to heal as well. And so I think that piece is left out a lot of times, is the healing that we all need and that we all fall short. And we're also learning about our own identity as we're moving through this, because white supremacy told us that this was impossible. And I'll just leave it right there for now.
Thank you.
I can go next and just share a little bit about who I am, what I do. My day-to-day job is nonprofit, but I think that I also carry a lot of my own personal beliefs, my own value system into that work. I got my start doing this kind of like social equity work at the age of 17, doing a summer program that really just opened my eyes. And so my goal always is to make sure that young people recognize the power that they have. They outnumber us very much so, and could very easily shift the ways that we do our own organizing, our own activism, our own healing, our own justice work. I think it's important for us to recognize that there's a lot of people who don't get the seat at the table because the people who are already at the table don't even think about them. And it's our goal to abolish that table, right? Get rid of the concept that we need to be invited into spaces and instead create those spaces for ourselves. And so my hope is every time that I'm, engaging with folks that I have that opportunity to talk about how we should be dismantling systems. We don't need to ask for permission. We just need to be doing it. I love The Simpsons. I'll make a Simpsons reference into everything that I do, including my activism. And shout out to all of my friends who put up with me and these references every day. But I try to find humor in some of this, like LaLa said, right? There's so much that's put out about Black, queer, trans communities, GNC, non-binary, where it's all negative and it's all pain and it's all hurt. And the truth is that we experience a lot of joy, and we should be showcasing that joy, and we should be allowed to experience that joy even amidst hardship. So that's all I got.
Hey, I'll go. I'm Asanni. To answer your question, I think I've been doing this work for a little over 6 years at this point. I started doing, I guess I was doing organizing work in high school too. I guess I really don't count it as such, but really in college when I came to Princeton and realized how fucking white it was. I literally was like, me and my friends literally had to like come together and do a lot of work because we were like, this is just way too white. Like this is really ridiculous. We started BJL actually because the night of Darren Wilson's non-indictment. And so that was the same night that it was like a huge party night for Princeton. And so we were all literally sitting in a room crying because Mike Brown had been killed, right? And this police officer had just gotten off. And meanwhile, literally right behind us, we hear people getting drunk and cheering, right? And so that's the entry into organizing, I think. It's through that moment. And then post-college, I started FTG for the Girls, which is this group, this collective that fundraises money on behalf of Black trans people to pay for their rent, their gender affirming surgeries. We also have, since COVID has popped out, we started a smaller micro grant fund for copay assistance, provide copay assistance and travel assistance back and forth or wherever you pick up your prescriptions. But I started it because, two of my best friends were facing evictions, and I needed to figure out how to help them. And so I came with them, and then at that part, another person came and was like, hey, you should try to do this every month. And we've been rocking ever since. So that's the work that I do, and that's what I've been doing. That's what I do full time at ATG.
Thank you all for sharing. I really appreciate that. Asanni, I would say I feel like I've been doing this work for a long time, but I would say, that moment around, Darren Wilson, I think that was also a radicalizing moment for myself. I was actually, I was in college at this time too. I was just about to graduate. I remember just thinking, And seeing that, you know, I'm about to graduate with this degree, and this degree is not going to stop any bullets. You know, this degree is not, you know, I have like full-blown existential crisis. I was like, I'm trying to go to grad school. What is this? What is this? And I think for that, I think I realized kind of how much the world around me was like just openly violent against people that look like me, that identify like me, against people, you know, within my communities. And that absolutely was a moment of kind of recognizing how much, you know, mental health and health is in lockstep with me being able to be productive at all, at anything. And so I'm wondering, you know, can you all speak to your own experiences or, you know, things you've seen within movements around burnout, around like kind of like the recognizing of, you know, the violence and the trauma, and the energy it just takes to do this work, and, you know, what you see in your spaces and what you've experienced in that way.
Burnout is a real thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, burnout is so real.
But I would say is that people of color, let's start there, right? And so people want to make it seem like they're separate. Like, I can't separate my Blackness from my identity. They're one and the same. And so a lot of things that I had to learn through me understanding my Black transness were things that my Black community didn't teach me. Like, the Black community doesn't even understand what burnout is. The Black community doesn't even understand what radical healing is and the toxicness that happens in the Black community. They don't even see it because they have not been conditioned or taught that these things exist. And so when you come into this work, in the beginning of this work, speaking for myself, when you come in this movement, you're like, oh my gosh, there's this whole community of folks who are thinking like me, that look like me, that want change in the world, that want healing, that want economic stability, that want all the things that we deserve as trans people and being Black and everything in the world. But they don't tell you about it doesn't teach you how to prepare for tokenization. It doesn't teach you on how, when you become that face, when you become that possibility for model for a community, that they always expect you to show up. And that a leader means that you don't get burned out. A leader means that you don't have trauma. A leader means that you don't have to engage in healing. A leader means that you are the know-all, be-all, and you are like a superhero. And so when you enter the work like that, you will burn yourself out faster, because everything is so nuanced and new, and it's just like all these amazing things being done. You're at every table, every meeting, every rally, every focus group, and you making sure your members are okay, and you're providing them with their everyday needs, and you go home and you realize that you didn't eat that day, that I have helped my community, but my home front is not even where it needs to be. And so it puts this thing that people think because you are a leader, that you have everything, that you are all knowing, that you don't fall short, that you can't get burnt out, and that you cannot be used and abused by these systems of nonprofit industrial complex that you're working in, that our community members sometimes forget. But also, they're so broken and trying to heal that I don't expect them to show up in those ways, because they're trying to just navigate this world. But I do charge the systems that hire us. I do charge other leaders who are leaders to talk about it, because when we don't talk about it, it makes it seem like we're here and we're all knowing and everyone else is there. And so I was ripping and running. I've been doing anti-violence work for about 9 consecutive years. I have talked about more deaths. I have talked to press more about deaths. I have advocated for murders in police departments than I ever have, even in my own family. There's been more deaths in community than in my bloodline. And so I became immune to it, where it's just rest in peace, rest in peace, rest in peace, rest in peace. And it was just one day where my body could not take it anymore. And I just like cried. And I told my job, I have to go home. Y'all have to let me disconnect, and you have to let me disconnect and someone taking what's on my plate. because me going home and take care of myself to come back to more stuff on my plate is not going to help, because I'm not in a mental space to hold this. And so for people to think that because it wasn't you or because you didn't know this person, that lived reality that could have been you by just making a wrong turn, making a wrong decision with a partner, hanging out in the wrong place, that's real. You know, and it's not about being passable. It's not about being trans-binary or non-binary. It is about your body is on attack because this country has said, I'm disposable. And so when you have to constantly live in that and also be in workplaces that are toxic like that, while also being this smiley face and this like beam of hope for your community, it can also come a lot. Can become a lot. At the same time, forgetting before all this activism and stuff, I have dreams and ambitions as well. And sometimes we forget that along the way. Like I say, I didn't want to be an activist. It just happened because it's my duty to do that. But I don't want to be on the front lines all of my life. My goal is that we don't have to do this anymore. And my goal is that the youth can take the torch and I can go somewhere and have my home and be happy and do other things. And when it's time for me to show up, the youth call me, I'm there. Like, I love Miss Major. She's the epitome, a pillar of our community. But it also saddens me that she's still on the front lines fighting. It saddens me that our community has not bought her a house or a ranch or a property and say, Miss Major, just be whatever you want to be. If you want to be naked in the yard, go ahead, because you've done enough. And so Black trans people, we have always been on the front lines and we never get a break for every cause. And our generation has to change that. We have the right to our own dreams and ambitions, and we have a right to say, we ain't doing this work. You get on the front lines and do it for a change. And I'm gonna just stop there.
That's hard to follow because everything that LaLa said is 100% true. I think that, there's often this idea that we don't hang up that activist hat or that leadership hat, that we keep this same role every day. And so if you see me on the street, you think that I want to sit and I want to talk to you about this trans person who got attacked and, oh my God, can you tell me about this thing? I don't want to talk about that, right? Like, I think that the reason burnout is so pervasive in movement work is because everyone just expects people to be that one thing all the time. There's no reprieve, there's no break. It's like the idea is that we only see our community reflected in data statistics and murders, not for our accomplishments and our achievements and all the things that make us happy and all the good things that we're doing for the community, right? I would say that there's folks that I know that are more burnt out today, like in August of 2020, than they were in, let's say, March of 2020, because there's this onslaught of, please tell me your story, tell me about your pain so I can empathize or sympathize, and then I can decide whether or not it's worthy enough for me to contribute to you and your cause. And I think that we really got to get away from that idea that like Black people got to be on 24/7. We don't have to be on. And the problem is that people expect us to be on because that is how community has always operated. It's always been Black femmes at the heart of the work that we're doing, right? And if you don't see the Black femmes and you only see Black masked people, there's a Black femme behind them who is telling them exactly what they need to do and how they need to show up. So we really have to figure out a way for community members to be honored for the work that they've done, for the effort and the energy that they've put into it, and not judge people for the ways that they need to take a step back. I resonate with what LaLa said. Miss Major should have everything she needs, no questions asked, from now until whenever, right? Like we shouldn't still have our elders out here on the front lines doing the work. Is it great to see them? Absolutely, but it's equally as heartbreaking to know that they feel like they have to be there instead of they're choosing to be there.
Yeah, I echo all of that. Like what both of you said is very spot on, very spot on.
Yes, absolutely. I think this piece about kind of how do we, as some younger folks, take up this work and how do we make sure we pass it on is really important to me. I love, I'm not a teacher, but I am an educator, and I do love working with youth and, really like sewing into them the, you know, possibilities and the opportunities and the tools that they need. You know, if you think back to, you know, your younger selves, you know, are there, you know, tools or words or, you know, just ideas that you wish, you know, maybe some elders had passed on to you as you like transitioned into this work, and, you know, taking it up wholeheartedly?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I have a lot of regret when it comes to organizing, like the younger organizer in me, right? And I make space for the fact that you learn, you grow. This is a thing that you kind of have to be taught, but you also have to do, right? And we all make mistakes. But I think that one thing that I would tell myself is that you can't change anything from the inside. That's not how this works. Like, I think that a lot of times with a lot of terrible institutions, whatever the institution might be, people think that, you know, well, if I just get there and if I just go do these meetings and I go in, I can change it from within. And you can't, and you won't. And I think that's, I so badly wanted to believe that much of my time at Princeton. And the truth of the matter is that, like, no, that's just not what's going to happen. I think that there is no change from within when it comes to racist institutions. Like, that's just not going to happen. No matter how many radical people they admit or they put in positions of power, it's not going to happen. It's a white supremacist institution for a reason, right? And these institutions are normally like that, like police institutions, colleges, and all that stuff, right? There's no change from, I tell myself and make myself back and move it.
I would tell my younger self, honestly, that professionalism is just an arm of white supremacy. And that all the ways that I thought that if I achieved whatever professional looked like, that I would feel good about myself. But the truth is that that's just not it. Like, there's so much of, I grew up in a diverse, quote unquote, town in Montclair, where they try to kind of teach you that, like, racism isn't really a thing here. So you can be shielded from it. You can achieve a lot if you go to school, if you get an education, if you get a degree, right? If you get a job behind a desk, that'll be what works. But the truth is, everything is about white supremacy. And the faster that we learn what white supremacy is and all the ways that it looks, the better we will be.
Younger self, honey, y'all want me to tell my age? That's not fair. I mean, I wouldn't think there would be anything I would like tell my younger self, because I feel like the path has been laid and I think that what happened has happened. But one thing I will say that I do appreciate about the future and like what happened is what's happening now is that there are so many, even though there are still disparities and blockage to education, but there are so many trans folks that were my age. I transitioned at 15 and I'm 42 today. And so to actually see you saying, I'm going to school, I'm going to college, I'm over my GSA, that was not a possibility for me. You know, I had to fight every day in school just to be able to walk in the hallway. I had to fight to be able to walk up and down my block. I had to, every single little thing. And yes, we're still fighting, but it was not in the ways that my generation had. Like, I was the weird kid on my block, like, and then I had to like literally fight the trade every day to let them know, don't put your hands on me. So it took me to do that for a future of other folks to be able to be comfortable, be themselves in my block. But what I will say is, which I will hope will change, is that because of that, a lot of trans folks from my era were forced to be grown-ups before they were supposed to. And school serves a purpose. Everything in life serves a purpose. So I didn't get to be in school because I couldn't be in the sports that I wanted to. I couldn't participate in the ways that I wanted to. I couldn't express, you know, how I got butterflies in my stomach every time I seen some guy, because I knew I would get beat up and then that would be, you know, shunned upon. So just those things that everyone else got to have, them experiences that a lot of our youth do today, even though some still don't, but there are some states where they're able to. I think that's such a beautiful space to be in. And that if you have that, if anything I would say to my younger self is try to hold on to your childhood as long as you could, because I was forced to be an adult really, really fast, had to learn things really, really fast in a world where parents who throw out their kids to think that because you're trans, that they're not predators on us. We're more predators when you throw us in the street. Because when someone knows your mama throws you out, you will sleep on my couch and I can beat you and I can pimp you out and do all the things that I can because you can't go home to mommy and daddy. So this narrative of like, you can throw your queer kids out and the world ain't gonna mess with them. They're more of a predator. And so just the fact of like how people can just discard youth, parents can't, and thinking that will not be predators of this world's violence. I think that is one thing that I wish people would understand. But yeah, just be youthful as much as you can, because once you become an adult, whether it's at 15, 16, whenever, you don't get to do over the childhood. It's like you grown now, but it'll be a point in your life where you be like, I didn't get to be a kid. And so those moments show up where you feel like you missed those parts.
So I'm wondering, how you find the intersections of, the importance of joy, of rest, of healing, and kind of embed it into, the work you do. One of my favorite, I don't know if it's a quote or if it was like a meme or something, but it was like this example of a choir. And it's talking about, how everybody learns the song so that, if you're out there and you're holding that, high C in the sopranos and you take a breath, there's, 10 other sopranos that can, pick up and like cover that gap. And then when you're ready to join back in, you're good. And so I think about that a lot when I think about, work and community, and supporting each other. I'm wondering, kind of where do you see some of the intersections? Where do you find yourself kind of embedding that joy, that rest, that healing in your work? Or where do you want to see it?
Actually, I think it comes mostly in the form of the community that I create when I'm doing the work. Like, I think about like my ride or die friends, some of whom are in this chat, probably on this webinar right now. But having those folks who remind you that it's okay for you to stop and it's okay for you to feel good about the work that you're doing, even if the outcome isn't always that great. I think a lot about the balance between being able to state a need or an ask of community and having that being met willingly and openly, which makes it feel even more validating. Like, it's okay for me to say this because someone will pick me up if I can't do that. Like, that's my goal in any of the work that I do, is that I want to be able to know, I want people to know that if they can't meet this bar and I'm a part of this team, I'll meet that bar for you. If you need to take a step back, that's okay, I'll take a step forward. And similarly, if you've got it, I'll hands off and you let me know when you're ready. But I think a lot of it is about the communities that we craft and the ability to be seen both when we're vulnerable, when we don't want to be vulnerable, when we can't really show up as our true selves, and having that community to like bolster you up.
I think what I always often think about is fixing generational curses, fixing things that continue to get passed down. And we just say, oh, that's how all the way, it's always been this way, or things will never change. And so just sticking to like telling folks that there can be an exit. You don't have to, be on the front lines all your life. You can go to school and finish that degree to get something that could help the movement. You can step away and hop back in whenever, and go do something else. I think that some of us get so trapped in it, or feel that we just have to be stuck there because you feel like, if I don't do it, who would do this? Or if I jump out, my community's gonna think I've left them. The work will always continue. And people always say, I've done this and I've done that, and that's great. But we're all continuing a manuscript from ancestors and other ancestors and other ancestors. We're just adding our chapter to this blueprint. And so it's okay to say, I want to pass you the blueprint because I'm done right now. But when you need me or you need help with something, you can call me. It's okay to step away and just, and be more than your transness. To actually say, I am a whole person and I want the world to see me as a whole person. And in this moment, I'm centering myself and I'm not going to center the movement or what people think I should be or what I should be doing. And with this pandemic going on, it has left me in a place to think about so many things. That's like, I'm at home all the time now. I didn't want to work from home. Like, this was not my dream goal. And so, like, when you're really sitting with yourself and your skill, you just see so many things that you were doing that didn't make sense. I look at so many projects I've done where I felt like I was obligated to do those things. That when I said it and I sat there, I knew that that person didn't mean me or my community any well. But because it was attached to a grant deliverable, or because people say, no, you got to do that because it's the New York Times. But the New York Times still doesn't mean it's any good. And so just really being grounded in your convictions and how you want to be as a person in the world and stand by that. And your gut never steers you wrong. Your gut would tell you if it's not, we don't have to take every little crumb or opportunity that they give us. And I think that sometimes we feel like that. We got to take, this grant, I got to apply. And those deliverables you're never going to live up to. But you fill it out because they baited you with that money. And so also the beauty about the pandemic is just seeing trans folks, particularly Black trans folks, take control over their dreams, their goals, their finances, and saying, no, don't give to HRC. Give directly to a Black trans person. Give directly to trans-led organizations. That's what you need to do. Seeing all these grants that they're making in the middle of the pandemic while our rest of our sister and counterparts are just worried. And I'm like, our community, we ain't got much, but we band together and find ways to stretch our money and help folks, from folks having Zoom shows and Instagram lives and all these things. I'm like, we're still manifesting and moving forward while the rest of our community is over here stressing out. And if you could just listen and pay attention, stop being homophobic and transphobic, you can learn something from a community that has always had to survive in the streets, in the West Village, being beat, being assaulted, being thrown in jail by the police. And guess what? They were doing sex work. Marsha and Sylvia was doing sex work to help the community. So we always talk about sex work and shaming sex workers. We came from sex work. Marsha and Sylvia was doing sex work to house folks, to feed folks. And now today it's like, oh no, it's this big old thing. We've been doing it. And we liberated our larger movement. And so it's now a point where it's like, we're saying, no, we want to center us. We're changing the narrative. We're not going to be like, back in the day where we just allow you to do us anyway. Or allow you to say, we're going to come back and change it. No, this time around, we're going to say, we put trans first and we're going to come back and get you if you're not with it. And so just seeing like that manifest, particularly from youth, that I'm not seeing so many youth that I meet that I didn't know, but I see them on Instagram, like, look at them taking agency over their own life and becoming entrepreneurs and calling out nonprofits and calling out politicians and showing up in ways that the media never covers because they just want to see us in our pain and trauma.
Yeah, I second all of that. I really, especially the comment about community. Like, I'm very thankful, very blessed to have people that I call siblings, or like my sisters, that literally are always, checking in with me and being like, "Hey, girl, log out, close the fucking laptop." Like, because if it's up to me, like, I'll be working till 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, just trying, because it's always so much to be done. There's always so much to be done, right? So I'm very thankful to have people in my life who care enough about me to literally come in, like, close my laptop and be like, please sit down, like literally, she right there. There she go, right there.
Hey, I love you, LaLa. Black Lives Matter.
Yeah, so I second that about community. Just having people in my life who literally look out for me and are always checking in on me and like making sure that I'm okay and making sure that like I'm doing work that sustains people, but that I'm also taking time to do things to sustain myself. Because if I can't pour into any glass if I'm empty, right? And so I'm very thankful.
can I make a comment to this is to similar to what both of you said, but I keep thinking about how like we're sitting at a time where like it feels like Black trans communities are being, you know, we're celebrating ourselves and we're you know, publicizing GoFundMe's and Cash Apps and Venmos and everything. First of all, we shouldn't have to have GoFundMe's for gender affirming care. People should be giving to those already. We should already have that taken care of. But I want to point out the fact that I have seen more of my trans friends, my queer friends, giving money to people more than I have seen nonprofits and corporations coming out of their own pockets to sustain the community, right? So there's more of us, like, we call it the trans 20, right? Where somebody gives you $20, like they Venmo you $20 and then you Venmo that $20 back and then they Venmo it back to you. Just keep going back and forth, because that's what I see community members doing. They're sharing the same amount of money that goes around because we have it. If it comes in, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to give it back as much as I can. But what I don't see is more institutional entities doing that same thing. They want to know your trauma before they'll give you the money, instead of just paying directly into the pockets of people who need it. And I wish we could have more conversations around that overall, where it's not, these conversations shouldn't be sustained by Black trans people because we're giving our money to other people. It should be sustained by other folks being like, wow, I have so much capital. I need to be able to give this out right now. Like me losing this $1,000, me donating this $1,000 is going to do nothing to my ability to live and thrive. I need to come out of my pocket and give that to someone who needs it. Like we need to be having more conversations like that.
Just one more thing, like changing the narrative of like what fundraising looks like. Like I said, before nonprofits, we just got our first trans-led nonprofit called the Sisters in Color Project in Detroit, Michigan. When I grew up, there was none. You know what the nonprofit was? The Black trans sex workers, the Black trans ballroom girls, the Black trans show girls who got together every time a community member died, anytime somebody needed a rent party for their rent, and anytime somebody went to jail. And so we've always been able to do these things. And so like, if you always say, and no disrespect to any organization, but people always want to throw in my face, I gave to this and I gave to that. And you gave to that. And I'm telling you that my community is still at disparity. So to me, you wasted a donation. And so why don't you, for once, just give it to the direct person for them to do what they need for themselves without judgment. Because you're giving that money to those nonprofits and you don't know what they're doing with that money. And so all the time, you always run a trans person. You would, oh, rest in peace, rest in peace. I always put in my post, have you checked in with a trans person to ask them, what do they need? Not saying, I'm sorry, rest in peace, but saying, hey, I've seen this post, I see another one. What do you need? How can I show up for you? And if that means financially, then that means financially. You know, and I think that's the shift that, you know, people forget about, or just, you know, giving directly to people and giving back into the nonprofit industrial complex, because they're going to fix it. They ain't fixed nothing yet. We still can't even stop the police from beating us and assaulting us. Like all the things that we still fighting from that. We still in our own community fighting for a collective understanding to talk about the LGBT has racism, classism, transphobia, xenophobia, anti-Blackness, trans-misogyny. We can't even have those conversations, but we can direct you to a nonprofit to donate and say, oh, I already gave. Or sometimes when they try to cross races against each other. Well, I just gave to the trans Latinas. That is so good that you gave to my trans Latina sisters. I love my sisters, but honey, you still could give me a 22. You don't get to, you know, knock it off as I gave to the, you know, South Pacific Islanders. I'm good. It was POC. No, everyone has specific needs and you need to go to all those tables. And I think sometimes POC gets lumped into one thing and they say, I've done it. I donate to POC people. But if you're not donating to the directly impacted and to the fact that trans women of color, they say the life expectancy is 35. I want a new study done because I'm believing it's lower than that. These babies are dying are from 17 to 25. Let me say that again. A 17-year-old was killed in a car. These babies are younger and younger and younger. It ain't even 35 no more. That's a problem. And that we're not upset and angry in the streets and that we're okay with that. We come on our sign and show up and go back home and walk past a group of trans folks and say, how are you getting home? Are you hungry? Do you need anything? that is a problem. You just showed up to hold your sign. And so like checking why you showing up and what does really allyship really mean in this moment.
I want to give a little more space for this moment. I know, I had I have my list of kind of some questions or themes and things like that, but it's been an interesting week, just this week. And wanted to give space to kind of think about, thoughts, feelings, what we're seeing in our communities around navigating, our recent protests, violence, political decisions, all sorts of things. What are folks hearing, seeing, feeling? What would you want, our folks in the audience today kind of to be thinking about when it comes to kind of just like, it's a wild time and every day is another 60 things to be thinking about and to process. But what are you processing and what do you want, folks really to be thinking about?
How I've done enough, how I've done the homework, how I've done the work. I feel like to the point when I just show up to places, sometimes, even when I see other trans folks, it's like, they're going to say that they're trans. They're pushing an agenda on us. Of course they're going to say that. No, when is Black folks actually going to show up? When is Black men actually going to come to the table and tell a brother, it's okay to love on her? It is wrong for you to kill her. It is wrong for you to harm her. When is Black folks going to take responsibility for the harm that they cause? When is cisgender women going to really authentically build a sisterhood with us? That does not include, I know, diva, Miss Thing, you're cute. And when we're giving you something fashionable, and then as soon as we go to the club, the first thing you're doing is telling somebody next to me what it is. When are we going to really authentically heal the Black community from these white supremacy tactics that we relive with each other and we don't call it that? Because that's what it is. Because white supremacy is about power and control. And so just because you are Black and you may not be white, you're still using that white supremacy power and control to control folks who you believe are marginalized or you feel is not valuable. And I feel like that is missing. They tried with Malik Yoba, but I feel like I said, he was the wrong messenger. But they need that conversation. Like, tell me that all these trans girls are in this world, not one of y'all brothers has the balls, excuse my French, to actually say, I love a trans woman and affirm them. Can't none of us trans folks who have uncles and cousins and brothers, can't none of y'all come to the front and say, I love my sibling, I love my family member, and this is wrong? I think when that happens, that is when the change is going to come, because we're already doing that labor all the time. But our community does not show up in that way. They don't even acknowledge us in our accomplishments. Like, they talk about Black history. There's no way that two trans women of color and a Latinx woman had started a riot that freed us, and Black History Month does not deem that as a part of history. That all the artists that were in the Harlem Renaissance that were sneaking in the back door entertaining for white folks, that's not history. That James Baldwin is not history. Like, all these things that they just ignored. So it's like, I'm trying to figure out where is the Black community's head at times. And even with our cisgender women, they only seem to still care about Black men that are killed by police. We're still fighting for Breonna Taylor. And so many other women who've been killed by the police that go ignored. And so it's like this image of like white supremacy, you center the man. And then everything else comes under. No, our men are causing harm to their children by not being there for them, to cisgender women, and most definitely to trans women. But also cis women, you play a part in that violence by the stuff that you say and by the things that come out of your mouth. And so when are we going to get to a place where we're going to say, yes, we want Trump gone, yes, we want policies, how are we going to fix each other? And I think that starts person to person, neighborhood to neighborhood, community to community, state to state. Who is willing to step up to do that work and not us doing the labor of that? Because it's always us calling these people, BET, calling the NAACP, calling these artists. It's always us. When are you going to call to action for us in this moment when Black lives, period, are gone. A Black trans woman was just killed at a visual in Portland. So she can't even come and grieve and get killed. That's the conversation I want to have, because I feel like all of us who are trans on this call, we've had these conversations. We know what we need. We know what's going on. We know how to change it. It's our other folks that we're connected to by the same race. And if we really, really got into it, because Black folks are the only people who really ain't got no culture, we're going to talk about it. A lot of us can't go past our grandma and our great granny, if that. And if a lot of us was able to find that history, we find that we're more connected than the white folks try to tell us that we're not. And so maybe we have more connection to realize we were more connected together, we wouldn't be hating each other so much and pulling each other apart.
I was going to say, LaLa took it right. This is why I always appreciate LaLa when she drops knowledge, even though I wasn't even expecting it, right? But the truth is, it is person to person. Like, think about who you love, who you care about, who's in your circle. How often do you check in on them? How often do you think they need to be checked in on? And do you adhere to that too, right? Because I see a lot of people just expecting like black trans femmes in particular to just be strong and like withhold like you can withstand every bad thing that comes your way. You're always ready to fight. And I think that the same can be said of trans masculine communities too, because we need to do a better job of not infantilizing trans femmes, right? The whole idea is like, oh, I see a trans woman and she's just beautiful. I should make a comment about her body or not about the substance of who she is as a person, right? Which I think it does no justice and no honor to the person and all the work that goes into a person being seen as whole. Also think a lot about, because we've been having these conversations for so long, right, is if white cis people are exhausted right now from the work that they've been doing for the last 2 months, I want them to stop and think about the work that Black people, queer people, trans people have been doing for decades and are exhausted and still pushing and still doing it. Why do other people get to tap out and say, well, I've talked about it, it's over. I don't have to give anymore. I don't have to talk about this anymore. This isn't important, this is irrelevant now, right? Keep having these conversations. And also don't ask trans people to sit in on those conversations, because we've already done that, right? We've already done the work. I'm not saying that there's not more work to be done. There's always work to be done. But I think that there is a time and a place with which we tap into people for resources, for knowledge, and for understanding. And when the time comes for you to do that work on your own so that you have something to bring to us, instead of coming to us empty-handed and expecting to leave full.
Both of y'all said a lot of beautiful points and things. I really appreciate you both saying that. I think that on top of all of that, because I think the only other thing I would add is, I brought up earlier, but like now we are in a very particular moment where I think people are having to question everything in their lives, right? This pandemic has kind of made us question a lot about ourselves and the work that we do, what we should be doing, what we want to do, a lot of stuff. And I think that we should take that questioning further. Like we should have always been doing this, but we have to take that question further, right? Question where we're putting our money, where we're putting our support, all that stuff. And I think that like someone, I can't remember who said it earlier, but someone said like was talking about the nonprofit and industrial complex, right? And the idea that like it's kind of just the easy thing to do, right? To make it seem like you care about something when you really don't. You just throw a few dollars at HRC and you like, girl, their lives matter. like when really we have to be very intentional. We have to be very, very intentional about where we're putting money and what it's going to, right? And so I think that like we have to move beyond like just giving to these orgs because they're like kind of their names are known. People think they do this work. Like we actually need to give to Black trans people directly, right? And Black trans-led organizations, give directly to them because we know that we do the work. We literally are always in the work. That's what we do, right? I can't tell you what HRC think. I know that making millions. I don't know what they do. I don't know what none of them do, right? And so like I think that we have to be very that's something that has to be abolished too. That's something that has to be abolished too. And we talk about abolishing these, that has to be abolished too. Because and not in the community. Sylvia told us that, Marsha told us that, everybody done told us that, right? And so that's the only thing I would add.
Thank you. So we have like a little bit of time left. So if people have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A or to, you know, put it in the chat or message me directly. I think one final question I'd have for you all is to share a little bit of what's giving you joy in this moment. I know we've talked about joy and healing a bit, you know, throughout this conversation today, but wanting to know like what's one thing, or maybe one thing that's giving you joy, or maybe even something you'd recommend for others to find a little joy.
For me, it's been actually diving deeper into my spirituality. So like things done and like my salt baths and like talking to my ancestors at my altar and, you know, leaving them offerings and stuff like that. I think that's been something that's been bringing me joy. Also, like I said, I'm very blessed to have really great, beautiful friends that I and during this pandemic, I haven't really felt lonely, and I'm very thankful for that because I have so many beautiful friends that I always. And so I think those are two things that are bringing me joy.
I think what's bringing me joy right now, honestly, is that my friends and I have gotten pretty creative in figuring out ways to see each other. After having gone 6 months without like being able to share in community, it's slowly starting to happen, which is really great. So as long as you can like socially distance and wear a mask, I'm like all for figuring out ways to be in community with one another. So I would say that's something that's definitely bringing me joy. I have 2 dogs that really are the only reason I actually go outside every day. So I'm quite thankful that I usually get, you know, a little bit of sunshine in the morning and in the evening, because otherwise I would just be inside. So get a pet. Actually, that's what I'm going to suggest for joy. Get a pet. Get a pet.
I'm actually doing that soon, so that's my weekend. One of my weekend tasks to do. Also, just like having accountability sisters and kinship and community, like really just having these moments, like when we're on quarantine, just thinking about what we want to shift in our life. Like what things do we want to change in our life? Is it a moment to shift a career, to start a project? Like we're sitting at home, like just thinking of ways of thinking about what you really want. I think we really get, especially as leaders, keen on like what the community wants or what the community thinks. But actually sitting with yourself. I always tell people, go to that one place when you was a kid and you told your parents, I want to be this when I grow up. But then white supremacy in the world told you couldn't. Go back to that space. This is a time. We have so many possibility models. It is a time for you to soul search with yourself and figure out, what do I want to do with my life? What I want to be, how I want to show up, and how do I want to leave my legacy? And there's so many of us, not even particularly just Black and trans, just Black people, period, that I know that have degrees who are not even doing their field because they got to pay the bills. And so that's just real for Black folks. We don't get to really live our dreams because the way the economy is. And then if you're Black and trans, you really don't have room for that. But this is the time to think about, what could I do that is my dream and that I wanted to do? We're deserving of dreams. We're deserving of love. We're deserving of abundance. We're deserving of families. Yes, trans women deserve kids too. You know, like they're so quick to like forget that. No, we're deserving of having children. We're deserving to be married. We're deserving to have all the things and wants that we desire. But sometimes in this work, in this life, we forget that because we get so burdened down with the work, like that would never happen for me. Or I'm going to stop trying to do that because it would never happen. Never stop going after what you want because when we start doing that, then we would say everything, you're telling the system that everything that they said about us would be true. And then when they kill you, they will look at you and say that you enjoyed it because you've allowed them to do that to you. And that you didn't, and also for us to be able to be the agitators for our community who doesn't have the strength to say no to those systems yet, and for the ones that we have not even seen yet because they're too afraid to even be seen. Bless me. Woo.
Yes, bless you. So one thing that I'll say that kind of has been giving me joy is being able to share gratitude in like new and different ways. I'm always the type of person that's a caregiver in like whatever relationship I'm in, whether it's work or friendships and things like that. But it's been like fun to see ways that I can, you know, express my gratitude or check in with folks in different ways. I've been really getting into snail mail, which also helps me support, you know, the postal service. That's important, y'all. And so I would love to kind of just share some gratitude with all of you. Thank you so much for being with us today and for, you know, sharing your experiences and, you know, for being just this fountain of knowledge and wisdom and experience. I think one of the things I love about community work, at least the work that I get to do, is that I get to like, you know, burst bubbles about, you know, what truth can be, what knowledge can be, what power can be, and really kind of center that in community. And so this has just been a shining pillar of that. And so thank you all so much. You know, there will be more conversations with, you know, the LGBT Center and Eric. Eric's doing amazing work as always. On the end, if you're thinking about, you know, community and engagement and activism and advocacy, you know, I'm a resource over at PACE if you know, want more ways of exploring that. I can say that, you know, there has been some shifts in the university for different ways that we have, you know, there's like different avenues in funding for some interesting things. And I always say, you know, in universities and institutions of power have to, you know, do what's right, and like I believe in reparations. And so I think, you know, using the money that's out there, using the resources that are out there to do the work you believe in, you know, that's where it's at. So thank you all so much. Look forward to having this recording up somewhere with some captions soon, so you can share this out with all your friends and communities. Keep showing care, keep, you know, taking care of yourself and giving up to others where you can. And I think that's where we'll wrap. Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful weekend.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. And then, Geralyn, I think you just hit end recording and it should work.
Gotcha.